So
fair.
All right. That's for the best.
I do have a question because I enjoy listening when I get a chance to try to put the earbuds in, especially at halftime, to hear what Rhule has to say with you when you kind of pull him off to the side, either coming in or coming out of the locker room, whichever one you usually grab him for. Do you get like a sense? Is he excited to see you in those moments? Obviously, he's like game focused, but does he like seek you out? Does he know you're looking for him, or how does that interaction?
Yeah. No, he's great. And it's also too, we haven't had this many issues, but there has been some times where there's crossover with the TV. And so sometimes we just work it out. But like at Minnesota, the guy that was doing the sideline was just doing it off camera. So a lot of times the TV people will, since we're live and have to hit but Coach he comes right up to me. The first year it was people were waving him, but he sees me, he knows to come over. And yeah, sometimes he's more talkative than others. He was pretty mad, obviously, or I should say disappointed in the first half at Minnesota, but I thought that was one of the best interviews he gave at halftime, so it just, I think, kind of depends, but no, he knows to look out for me. And it's just depends, I think, on how they perform in the first half, on how talkative he is, or how sometimes he's just like laser focused and we're walking, we're not stopping. Sometimes he'll stop. You just got to be ready to roll with it in those situations.
Jess, I'm always curious when, with games like Minnesota and Northwestern, where I think they posed very similar challenges for Nebraska in the way they wanted to play the game. Did you notice anything different about the vibe around the team or the mindset around the team between those two games, or did it, I think as fans, a lot of times we want to say like, oh, well, they must have not been locked in or whatever before Minnesota, but they were Northwestern. Like, do you get any of that when you're on the sideline?
Yeah, I do. I kind of will argue a little bit on the not having the energy before Minnesota. I think they just did a different kind of routine, because at Maryland they were because it was a 2:30 game, a lot of them came out and just did, because they do a lot of things on a game day, and depending on the time of the game, and especially at home, I think sometimes they're utilizing other spaces. They've got a lot of incredible areas that they can kind of get themselves warmed up. I just think we didn't see them as much out there on that night game, because you're also trying to conserve your energy when it's a night game and kick it off. And so I just think it was a little bit of a different warm-up situation. But then I will say, yes, once the game started and it wasn't going right, did not see the kind of juice on the sideline that I just think they were a little shell-shocked that they got punched in the mouth and they weren't punching back. But then I do think it was vastly different. And I think, and Coach Rhule, I asked him about this too, because after in my post-game interview with him, a lot of the guys that are the walk-ons or the redshirt guys that get to be on the sideline for the home games that that don't get to travel because you're limited on your travel party roster they were crazy on the sideline. They were jumping up and down the whole time. They were absolutely bringing the energy. And then, yeah, I think they were made an effort because look, it's the Big Ten. They've seen it now multiple times. It's not going to be always perfect. That's what's crazy about this team, is that they've won 6 wins and they still haven't put together, a complete game performance, really. And so, I think when things were not going their way against Northwestern, you saw a different kind of approach to how they handled it against Northwestern than they did against Minnesota, definitely. And I think even just throughout the week, you could tell you don't want to let it beat you. Coach Rhule's big on, hey, once we get past a game, win or lose, and it's been the whole season, not just Minnesota, but and this team is like this too. They do their Tell the Truth Sundays, and then they close the chapter. And while they're done, kind of have moved on from it, you can learn from it. But you could tell they were. That was the most, I think, ticked off I think this team was, and it just was a different feel. I've been covering this team, I've been the sideline reporter. This is what, my 4th season, and just the way that they were disappointed in themselves, and not taking anything away from Minnesota, but just that they did not put together the kind of performance that it takes to be able to do the things that they want to keep doing and continue to do and strive for. And so I think they were just more mad at themselves for allowing that to snowball the way that it did. And you could feel it. You definitely could feel it lingering throughout the entire week. And, as a lot of those a lot of the guys, like I talk to Jeremiah Searles every week, and a bad loss like that will linger until you can right it and get back in the win column. And so I think it did. I think it lingered. While they didn't want to let it beat you twice, I think it did fuel them. And then, the energy was definitely different on the sidelines against Northwestern than it was against Minnesota.
You brought up something interesting there about this team not really having put together a 4-quarter game yet this year. I think a lot of people use that as a negative, but I don't know. I feel like you can also flip it the other way, that there's still growth potential for a team that's 6-2 and arguably in as good a spot as anybody kind of predicted they would be at this point. How do you take that when you're like, yeah, would love to have seen them put together a full quarter, 4 quarters at this point, but they haven't. How do you process that?
I think it's a positive. I mean, yeah, I think with the coaching staff, they know the potential, and you want to start seeing that be put together. But I look at it as, but I'm also a positive Polly. I'm not a negative Nancy. I'm more of a glass half full type of person. And so I think the fact that they've been able to find ways to win in situations that in the past they weren't going to be able to do. And even, the fact where there are times that this team looks dominant, they just have to learn how to put the foot on the throat and keep the pedal to the metal. And, look, teams are not going to lay down just because you go up by 2 scores. And so you've got to keep fighting in that regard. I think they're still learning. I mean, there's a lot of no excuses, but there's still a lot of young players and some guys in some roles that they haven't been in. And so I think they're trying to figure out how do we put that complete game performance together. And, and there's a lot of good teams, a lot of good coaches in this league. So you can't just expect to, blow somebody out just because you put together a couple of big plays. Guys, people are going to fight back. And so I think they're learning that, but I take it as a tremendous positive that this team has not reached their full potential yet. Now's the time, when you go into November, and there's a lot of things on the table for this team. You want to start putting it together, kind of with basketball. You don't want to be playing your best basketball in November, December. You want to put it together in March. I think now's the time you want to start seeing them start putting that together. But I look at it as a tremendous positive that they're 6-2 and off to the best start since 2016 and have not played a complete game performance yet.
Yes, I'm curious just from your perspective on the sidelines and your interaction just with the team too. The conversation coming into the year was always, oh, well, this is such a young team. It's one of the younger, built rosters in the Big Ten, all that sort of stuff. What's the emotional maturity that you've seen through this team through, all the games they played so far? Because you mentioned earlier the conversation and how the energy level was low during the Minnesota game, and maybe it wasn't the pregame necessarily, but then during the game it felt a little bit low. And even going back to the Northwestern, when someone like Teddy Prohaska goes down, I mean, that can kind of swing your emotions one of two ways, right? You can either rally or sometimes it kind of brings down the energy level on the sideline. How have you noticed this team kind of goes through those emotions, and how have they been able to respond just in the entirety of the season and maybe in some critical moments throughout just key games?
Well, I would have said much better and that it was solid until Minnesota, and I think that's the one kind of glaring blip on the radar or whatever you call it, that I think that it was pretty uncharacteristic with how this team has handled, because even going back to Cincinnati, and that was one of the things I saw in that first game, that you are, again, you're leading and then some things go wrong, and the way that you maybe could see some body language in seasons past, did not see that against Cincinnati. So I've been saying that from the start. I've been really impressed with how this team has handled that. They say it all the time. And even to this, if you walk by or you're listening to the coaching, a lot of times it's next play. What's next? Next play. What's next? Whether it's good or bad. So you can't and I think that's where, maybe sometimes they get hung up on if they have a great play. Well, you can't get hung up on that either. You talk about it a lot. We talk about it a lot. Like, if something bad happens, you got to move on from it. It's the same thing with something good. You have to be able to keep moving forward and not let whatever happened in the past affect you, both whether it's negative or positive. So that's a lot of the messaging that you hear. And that's been talked about, hammered in for this group for a couple seasons now. I just think they're really starting to embrace it, and that culture is in place. And they talked about it in the spring, and it's just their messaging. What's next? Next play. And so going throughout those games that even Michigan, you just felt like they handled some of those things better. And last week against Northwestern, felt like they handled those situations. And Teddy, heart goes out to him. Hate to see a guy that's just battled through it. He knew right away. I mean, I tore both my ACLs. Once I tore the first one, I knew immediately when I tore the second one what happened. Like once you experience, what's happened. So he goes in the tent, he comes back out, and he doesn't even. A lot of times he'll take those guys back into the locker room, and he stood right there, and he was helping talk to Turner, and he was standing right there. And then he comes out in the second half, and he's got street clothes on and ice on his knee, and he's trying to pump up the crowd, and like is constantly having around in those offensive line huddles and talking to Turner or whoever it might be. He did the same thing last year when he was hurt. He was really good about coaching Gunner through those situations. And so I could not say enough about Teddy and the way he handled it, knowing that his career is done. That was it. And so the fact that he's done for the season, and that it just is an awful injury that he's already experienced and been through, and the fact that he knew it and stayed right there and stayed locked in. And there's a lot of those guys on this sideline that I think have handled and tried to make sure that this team responds in the correct way throughout an entire football game, to be able to come out on the other side of games that in the past they were not able to do so. So outside of the one lingering situation at Minnesota, I think this team has been much better and much more mature and emotionally mature at handling these kinds of ebbs and flows and ups and downs of a football game.
Jess, I want to switch gears a little bit here, but still kind of talking about emotional, I guess, growth. I thought we got something from Coach Butler yesterday in his press availability that I don't think we would have gotten a year ago, when he's talking about or answering the question about Sierra Wright and what it meant to him that Sierra Wright recommended him for the defensive coordinator job. We kind of saw a side of Coach Butler that we really hadn't seen publicly. Is that something that, I guess, privately or behind closed doors, we knew there was a little bit more to him, because that's really the first glimpse of it we've gotten as a fan base?
Oh yeah, those defensive backs love him. And, it was fascinating listening to him coach those guys last year and just hearing his communication. I mean, he's coming from the NFL, and he's talked a lot about that, about learning how to, you're talking about coaching pros. And then while you've got some older defensive backs that you can talk to differently now, it's still a different situation. But just to hear the way he coaches and teaches on the sideline, I mean, and he's hard on those guys. But ultimately, I think with Sierra, the reason why he has such reverence for Coach Butler is because Sierra has turned into, one of, you could argue, one of the best players on the defensive side of the ball. And, teams don't throw at him. And, the way that he has evolved through the coaching and teaching of Coach Butler since he's been here, and the culture that's in place here at Nebraska and all of that, just the way that he's grown and matured. But you can see it too, just the way that, since Coach Butler has been the defensive coordinator, and a lot of those guys in the back end are the older guys are the team captains, but he communicates a lot with those defensive backs, Sierra, Deshaun, Marquise Buford, those guys, to be able to also kind of communicate with the rest of the team. But a lot of the things that he's talking about is to those older guys. So he has that comfort, but I also think he has those relationships. He trusts them, and he knows that he can, talk with them and work through things in a way because he had that year with them. But I'm not surprised. I mean, Sierra is one that he's very appreciative of the spot that he's in now. And he knows that he's not there without the tutelage of John Butler. And so, I think for any coach, right, that's what you want, is for a player to grow and develop and then appreciate the role that you played in that. I mean, I think that shows you why you coach, right? I mean, that's ultimately why guys get into coaching. And so I think that's really what you saw yesterday. Yeah. Was, just, hey, this is why I do it. Right. And for guys like those relationships, like Sierra Wright, that he's been able to build.
Jess, as the season has progressed, one of those, kind of talking about Sierra and John Butler and all that stuff, who have you seen take the biggest leap in maybe leadership or just being more vocal on the sidelines and kind of being that rallying person when it comes to maybe the in-game or what your interaction has been through practices or what you've seen or conversations you've had? Have you noticed that there have been maybe different names or someone that surprised you that stepped up more than what you had expected, maybe from not necessarily somebody else, but maybe just from what their role is and where they are now?
I don't know if it's surprising, but Sierra is one that's absolutely, I mean, he's going up and down on the sidelines when things are going wrong, or even just celebrating other guys. Emmett Johnson's another one of those guys that I think you've seen him not just on the offensive side of the ball, but he comes over and talks to the defense. Rocco is unbelievable at that as well. And how about V9, Vincent Schaefer's? He's just an energy guy. I mean, he's a teammate celebrator, a lot like Ja'Cory Barney. But nobody gets more hype for their teammates like Vincent Schaefer's, and especially on the defensive side of the ball. And I actually brought that up to Coach Rhule on the TV show a few weeks ago. But it's almost like Ja'Cory and V9 are like each other on their sides of the ball. What they do to help bring the energy and the juice, but also they're really, really great players. And so I think those, you have to remember, it's hard to believe that, Ja'Cory and Vincent are sophomores, true sophomores. And so the fact that they are such good teammates and, try to keep guys up and hype guys up, but also celebrate when something good happens. There's a lot of that, though. I think that's what's different about this group and why you keep hearing players talk the way that they do about this group and how much they've enjoyed it. I mean, I did another interview with Javen Wright yesterday, and he said this is the best chemistry of a team that I've been a part of. And I think you can see that it's hard to point to one person because it goes throughout the entire football team. And that's why you start to see, with Coach Rhule's teams, them really take a step in year 3 is because they do become more player led and they take more ownership in that. And that's a big part of it, is that it's not just one or two guys they're trying to lead the way. It's they're all trying to lead themselves. And I think you see a lot of that on a game day for sure.
Jess, how much of that kind of energy and emotion you get on the sideline do you credit to the addition of Mike Ekeler? Obviously, he touches way more than the special teams. And we heard the funny comments of Coach Rhule of like, hey, you can celebrate, just don't touch me, man.
Yeah. Well, even the videos on the sideline, like, do you brace for impact too? Like, are you afraid he's coming for you next?
Luckily, I'm behind the fence, so he'd have to hop the fence. But no, I don't even know if it's so much. Yes, I mean, guy likes to celebrate, right? We've seen that. But I don't even know if it's so much just his reactions as it is what a big special teams play does to a sideline. I think that's where the biggest impact is, the juice that those kinds of plays, the spark that it provides. And it's just, I forgot exactly what his analogy was, but again, I'm going back to Jeremiah Searles, but he talked about, the special teams being basically like the heartbeat. I mean, it's like it's what really can make a team go. And I when you need a spark, when you need a something to ignite, it's that's what those special teams plays have done. And you can point to every single game. I don't know if they're 6-2 right now without, special teams and some of the big plays they've made in some of these games. So yes, he definitely brings the energy. And then you can tell some of the players that have really embraced their roles, how fired up they get when they come over to the sideline. But then also, I just think when you have those big plays, it just can really change the trajectory, and it just absolutely ignites and gives so much energy to a sideline. And I think that's been probably the biggest impact with Coach Ekeler.
Jess, how excited are you to see your good friend Lincoln Riley again?
I really have a lot of respect for Lincoln Riley. He was great to be at Oklahoma. His wife, Caitlin, is incredible. I'm also really close with the wide receivers coach and his wife, Dennis and Tasha Simmons, their son, Cannon. So it was really cool last year when we were at USC. Unfortunately, it was a tough loss, but the way that the tunnel goes, the teams walk up together. And I was standing out there waiting to do some interviews. And Coach Riley and Caitlin stopped and talked to me before he even went in to talk to his team, and just, how are you doing? Good to see you. Can you believe we're meeting in the Big Ten? That kind of stuff. And so, no, they're great people, have a lot. And you want to talk about just a brilliant offensive mind. I've been privy to interview a lot of people that can dive into that. I've seen it firsthand, the way that he can, dissect and put his offenses in the best ways to succeed against any kind of defense. He's absolutely one of the best out there. And so it'll be a good challenge, but yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this matchup. The 6:30, I've worn black every single day this week, in honor of the blackout. So it's going to be a night game. I think the energy is going to be absolutely electric. It needs to be a lot like the Colorado game last year so that this team can feel it and it makes an impact. I mean, Tony White, actually, it was him that, and Heinrich Harburg brought this up yesterday when I was talking with him, but they put a graphic on the big screen. I don't know if you guys have noticed that counts and gives credit to how many penalties that the crowd has accounted for. They track it throughout the entire game and then throughout the season. And Coach White actually had brought that up last year. And then Husker Vision, I had passed that along to Husker Vision, and now they do it. And Heinrich said, I think that's one of the coolest things. They put that on the big screen, and you can see how much of an impact that the crowd makes. So I think it's going to be big. It's going to be, again, you don't a lot of times get night games this late in the season. So you just don't take them for granted. And then it's a huge matchup with a lot on the line, as Coach Rhule pointed to. It's not just USC that has a lot in front of them. It's meaningful for both these teams. So it's a big matchup. Obviously I have ties to that sideline, but I'm really excited just for the opportunity for Nebraska and to see if they can take another step forward in what's going to be an amazing atmosphere on Saturday night.
You making sure the entire radio crew is decked out in black?
Yeah, in fact, our guy Al at Adidas dropped us off some black hoodies yesterday, so we got to somehow find a way to get it to DB. I guess he could change when he gets here, but yeah, so we've got lined out there. We're ready to roll there. I just got to make sure I've got the layers on, because everybody's scaring me with how they're threatening or kind of saying how cold it's going to be, but I'm ready for it. I'm seasoned. I just got to layer up. So
yeah. Are the Rileys prepared for the cold? Do you text them at all and just say, hey, it's going to be -15 when you get here on Friday. It's going to be brutally cold. The snow's coming down, all that stuff. Try to get in their head.
Heck no, I don't. But they've also played in some cold weather before, so I don't know how big of a emphasis or impact it will make, but they're fully aware. Obviously, this is their second season in the Big Ten. I'm not sure where they played last year at the end of the year, but maybe it will make an impact. But I mean, it's not like it's going to be. What was that game 2 years ago where it was Purdue? I think that it was absolutely miserable, and it was windy, and it felt like it was just shards of glass cutting into your skin every time that the wind would blow. I don't think it's going to be that bad. So,
well, Jess, I have it on pretty good authority that DB is headed to Lincoln right now, so you might be able to get his hoodie to him.
Oh, nice. All right, we'll try to pass it along to him then.
There you go, Jess. We appreciate the time as always. Stay warm this weekend, and hopefully we get a 100% blacked out crowd.
Yes. You didn't even ask me about any other sport.
Oh yeah, well I wanted to, but Ravi wanted to shut
ahead.
you down soon.
I
know. I saw your tweet yesterday that it's your favorite time of the year, the full crossover right now. I mean, this has to be it. How do you keep your brain straight when you're talking to football, volleyball, basketball, and then all the coaches on top of that too? I mean, it feels like you're just having to square away as many calendars as possible to make sure that you know where everyone's going and who you're talking to.
Yeah, it's one of those times where it's one day at a time. You just got to approach what do I have on the schedule today? But no, I brought that up because I'm really excited. Husker wrestling starts. We're gonna have Mark Manning in studio today. DB is a big fan of Coach Manning, so excited for Husker wrestling. They should have a big season. I know he's excited about that group, but no, it's a lot. But I love it. I love November. It's fun. It's crazy. I do have to just go 1 week at a time and then literally write down. I'm a writer. I need to see it visually, not just put it in my phone calendar, but okay, what do I have this week? And then this is how I got to tackle it. But luckily, this has these are teams that I've covered now for several years, so I know them a little bit, I guess, now. So it's not as much of a challenge, but it's fun. I love this time of the year, and it's bonkers, but I love crossover season. So here we go.
Well, on top of that, too, I mean, do you ever consider when you have those episodes of Sports Nightly where you have 3 or 4 different guests from the different sports coming in, just asking Heinrich Harburg about the basketball team, be like, you dunked once. What's your evaluation of Rink Mass? Did you like his shooting performance?
Yeah, and there are a lot of those athletes and coaches that, I mean, that's what's cool, really, really cool and different. I think that separates Nebraska from a lot of places is the way that the other programs are invested in each other. And, they all talk about Coach Manning, how supportive he is of all the other different programs. The Coach Hoiberg is, he will come in, and when I do the TV show and the radio show with Coach Hoiberg, and he'll ask me about what's going on with every other sport. Like, he wants to stay up to date on everything else, like what's going on with baseball, how's the softball team looking. And so they are truly invested in the other programs, and they want everybody to succeed. And so when, I think it's when you're a coach and a player, you're not always a fan of, you can't always be a fan, but with here, when they're not in their sport, they are fans of the other Husker sports. So I think that's what's great about it. So a lot of them could absolutely break down and talk about the other teams. There's no doubt in my mind.